Morning.
How are you?
I'm well.
How was the breakfast?
There wasn't any breakfast.
Oh.
Really?
No, it was just an early speech. Which is like unfair, deeply unfair. It's worse, I brought my son along and said he'd have breakfast. And so he's downstairs in the cafe. Very good. Well, I've just addressed the UDIA conference, which is focused on ensuring that we have sufficient housing supply here in the southeast to address the population growth that we are currently seeing. And I've outlined a range of initiatives that the Palaszczuk government will put in place to support industry to deliver that land and housing stock that we require. The most important is a new growth area delivery team. That will be the state planner working with Economic Development Queensland to deliver new growth areas to make up for the supply that has been taken in the rush to particularly home and land packages caused by the successful home builder program. I've tasked them with choosing one pilot growth area between now and the end of the month to work on integrated planning so that we can get new stock into the market as fast as we possibly can. It's incredibly important that we ensure that there is affordable housing in the southeast market, and some of the surge in population movements, this 88% net migration to Queensland, couldn't have been predicted. And now that we see it occurring, it's incumbent on us to act quickly to ensure that land is available for the development industry to build houses for those people to live in.
Do you have any areas in mind? Where are other parts?
Look, that will be for them to now work with industry to identify. There are particular challenges on the Gold Coast and in the Redlands area, but other parts of Brisbane, there are issues associated with fragmentation of development lots. And one thing industry has said to us is that they would like to see government to play a more active role in bringing developers together and assisting them to deliver the infrastructure needed for them to develop their lots together. And so that's the kind of thing that I want this team working on. Yeah, so we have a building acceleration fund, and we're just finalising how to invest about $70 million of that. That is a low-interest loan provided by the state to developers to deliver the infrastructure that they need to open up their land. That's going to be really important, and that will be available to this team in identifying where they can open up new growth areas.
On other topics, do you think the Fed should bring in an aged care levy?
Look, I think, and I've been very vocal on this, that the federal government have failed older Queenslanders, repeatedly failed older Queenslanders, and the evidence that has been heard by the Royal Commission, the stories that you have all reported on are nothing short of heartbreaking, and clearly the government needs to step in and do more. That includes better funding, but also more active and better regulation. Funding isn't the only solution, but it clearly needs to be part of it. Availability of places, home care. The fact that people are waiting so long for home care packages that by the time they get them, they already need a higher level of care. They're the kinds of things that the Morrison government needs to address. And what I've found disappointing is that the evidence of this has been clear all along. There was no need for them to wait for the report before they act. They could have and should have been acting throughout.
How are plans for the AstraZeneca doses going? Does the state know yet how many doses it will receive next week? While we receive some information from the Commonwealth about what to anticipate, we can't action the arrival of those vaccines until they are here, until we know that we are getting them. And so Queensland Health is constantly monitoring that and making sure that we get those vaccines out as quickly as possible. What I'd emphasise, and what the Chief Health Officer has said, is that the most important thing here isn't how many people we vaccinate in the first week or the second week or the third week. It's how quickly we get everyone vaccinated, and particularly our vulnerable groups and our frontline workers. That's what will change how we can get back to normal after this pandemic.
Can we set too low a target for the rollout for the first few weeks? I mean, the other states seem to, given the percentage of vaccines that they have used to vaccinate, ours seems to be pretty low.
Oh, look, it's incredibly important that we get this right, and as I say, the number we do in the first or second week isn't what's important. It's how quickly we can get it out and how confident our community is in getting it, and that's been the priority here. I think I have a lot of confidence in Queensland Health and the Chief Health Officer's planning and ability to deliver this, and where we've seen the system fall down have been on the Commonwealth side, where they are rolling out the vaccines in aged care at the moment.
The target for the first week was 1,000. What's the target for this week?
I appreciate this is a topic that I have substantial historic knowledge of, Lydia, but you'd have to address that to the Health Minister. We're happy to get you that information.
Canberra's been asking for more information repeatedly on the Wellcare proposal. Have you supplied that, and why haven't you?
We've supplied extensive plans on this proposal. I understand that the Morrison government have consistently come back with that excuse, but it's just an excuse. There is more than sufficient information for them to at least provide in principle support for the concept. Once they do that, and once they provide some information about how they will support it, then the Wagners will be in a better position to fill out some of those details. But a lot of the detail has been prepared. This is an opportunity, a great opportunity for us to have a national quarantine centre, for us to bring more people back, for us to keep our communities safer, for us to avoid another snap lockdown like we've unfortunately seen as a result of recent outbreaks from hotel quarantine.
So Queensland won't be giving any more information to the feds on the proposal?
We're consistently sharing information with the feds, and obviously there's a National Cabinet meeting on Friday. I know the Premier is very keen to have this discussion, as is the Victorian Government, who have their own proposal for a near-airport quarantine facility. Between the two of those, we could get lots more people back here safer without potentially exposing our communities. On the topic of National Cabinet, I understand that today the federal government have extended the ban on international travel for a further 6 months, and in doing so, I think they need to accept that that means that workers and businesses and industries and towns that are disproportionately exposed to international tourism need ongoing support. At the moment, JobKeeper ends at the end of the month, and we anticipate 50,000 Queenslanders will lose their job at that point. The withdrawal of JobKeeper, as well as the COVID supplement, represents something like a 3% withdrawal of GDP from the Australian economy. And if you go to places like Cairns and the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast, that 50,000 jobs lost represents something like 15 or 16% of their pre-COVID employment levels. We can't afford that, and we also can't afford for those businesses to close that deliver the tourism products that attract people to our state. We won't just be able to turn them back on once our airports are open again and once we're inviting people back from overseas, and so there is an important interest for our economy in keeping those products, the products that we sell overseas, open and available so that they are there once international travel returns sometime down the track.
Josh Frydenberg said the feds have spent $24 billion in Queensland. You guys are only keeping $8. Why can't you do that?
Well, the federal government is responsible for international borders and the ongoing economic impacts we are feeling here in Queensland, particularly in places like Cairns, are as a result of those international border closures. But of course we support them, and we are doing a lot. We are doing more per capita and per share of GDP than other states are. It's true that the Morrison government's investment has been disproportionately in Queensland, and that the result of that, or the corollary of that, is that Queensland is disproportionately exposed and will be disproportionately affected when JobKeeper is withdrawn. The reason that they've spent more in Queensland is because Queensland is more exposed to the ban on international travel.
What else in the state government? Do you extend the payroll tax deferral or any other relief?
Look, there's measures that can be considered, but we have delivered very substantial support. And if you look across the Queensland economy, most sectors are doing relatively well. It is those that are disproportionately exposed to international travel that are suffering the worst, and they will, we fear, their economies will fall off a cliff when those 50,000 Queenslanders fall into unemployment because of the end of JobKeeper.
Why aren't we standing by a decision that Jackie Trad made when she was Treasurer to fund hotel quarantine costs?
Oh, look, as the Premier outlined earlier, there wasn't a decision in that regard. I've seen some reporting, but no evidence of that being the case. My understanding is that the decision was taken that states would fund their own costs. What has happened here is that New South Wales has just out of the blue sent Queensland an unsolicited invoice for a bunch of people who gave Queensland addresses and a bunch of people who had no address here at all. And can you imagine just sending a $30 million invoice without calling ahead, without discussing it, without outlining how you arrived at that figure? That's what's happened here, and rightly so. We are defensive of Queensland's taxpayers' funds. We have housed many people from other states in our hotel quarantine here in Queensland, and I've particularly been disappointed at the approach the New South Wales government have taken.
What about that $20 million that you say that we pay for New South Wales residents? You're going to send that a bill, you just got to write it.
Well, that wasn't our intention. That's not the way we would like to see this work. I mean, we've said all along that quarantine should be a federal government responsibility, and it's disappointing that they haven't taken on that responsibility. They have a chance to assist more with the support for this national quarantine service, and that's something that we'd like to see supported.
Have you done the math?
Sorry?
You're just paying that $20 million.
Well, we've met our costs. Sorry, Lane. There's two different things there. The 19.2 million relates to unpaid healthcare costs. So we have a written agreement with other states to deliver healthcare to their residents when they need it, and the New South Wales government have refused to pay under that agreement. That's quite different to a situation where there isn't a written agreement. So that's normally how these things work. There would be a national agreement, like there is a national healthcare agreement. New South Wales have refused to pay their share of the national healthcare agreement while demanding we pay for something that there isn't a written agreement for.
Have you done the maths on how much they owe us for quarantining New South Wales residents yet?
No, we haven't, because that wasn't our intention. If we were going to send an invoice to anyone, we'd probably send it to Scott Morrison. He's the one who really should be paying for this. But as we have outlined, we think roughly 6,000 New South Wales residents have been through hotel quarantine here in Queensland. They've billed us for 7,000 Queenslanders, plus, bizarrely, our share of 5,000 people who they couldn't even get an address from.
And just one more on Wellcamp. Aside from allowing the international flights to land into Toowoomba, what else do you expect from the federal government?
Well, that's the bare minimum of what we need, is for them to allow repatriation flights to land at Wellcamp so that people can transfer directly into the accommodation. Of course, if they wanted to be more supportive, there is much more that they could do. But as the Wagners have outlined, they are able to operate that facility at the cost of hotel quarantine that is charged back to those returning travellers.
So you wouldn't be expecting like Defence Force in there helping out or anything like that?
Well, again, as I say, they are things that they could do if they wanted to assist more, but given how unwilling the federal government has been to assist throughout this, I mean, you heard the Prime Minister say that they had no intention of supporting. So we are, in the very least, just hoping for the bare minimum that is required for us to be able to make it work, and that is for flights to be able to land. We would prefer, of course, to see greater support, whether that be funding or Defence Force assistance.
A North Queensland farmer is saying that Queensland fruit farms are folding while Queensland Health struggles to approve on-farm quarantine Pacific Island workers who desperately needed to pick tons of fruit. He's saying that the scheme is diabolically complicated and under-resourced.
Well, I know that our Chief Health Officer Queensland Health and the Agriculture Department have worked really closely with peak grower groups as well as individual farmers to deliver that on-farm quarantine. You've got to remember what we're doing there, though. We are bringing travellers in from other parts of the world, where while we still have international travel restrictions, and so it's incredibly important that we maintain community support for an initiative like that, and that could very quickly be undermined if we did have cases of COVID-19. So it's very important that we get it right. We've done very, very well so far, and while I understand how challenging it is to get workers, particularly with a lack of backpackers available to do that work, I think we also have to acknowledge that the fact that we've been able to do that is really, really important and is the result of a lot of hard work.
Should the State Archivist investigate the Premier's two private email accounts?
Oh, Dom, I've addressed these questions. Everyone's addressed these questions. You know, this is a debate about an email sent six years ago. The public have clearly delivered their judgment on this. They've re-elected our government twice since the initial controversy. Here, I don't think there's anything more to see.
They didn't know about the Premier's emails when they voted in the October election.
I don't think this is what people are concerned about out there in the street. They're concerned about getting their vaccine. They're concerned about our efforts to create jobs post the pandemic.
The Premier says all the emails have been retained. If they're not about government business, why do they need to retain them?
They're questions for the Premier and the Archivist, but what is important and what the Premier there is underlining is that this has all been through an appropriate process and all relevant emails have been retained.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That 50,000 figure,
Yes.
is that new? Is that new?